the President of the Academy, past presidents, vice presidents, fellows of the Academy, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, students, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of fellows of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, Ghana's premier learned society, I warmly welcome you to today's event, which is the third day of the Forum of the Academy. The chairman for today's event is Professor Samuel Kofi Sefa-Dedeh. He's the Vice President, the Sciences Section. He's a Fellow of the International Academy of Food Science and Technology. He's a Fellow of the Kellogg Foundation Leadership Program, the Vice Chairperson of FAO WHO Codex Alimentarius Commission based in Rome and Geneva, Foundation Dean of the Faculty of Engineering Sciences, University of Ghana, Chairman of the Planning Committee for the establishment of two public universities, University of Energy and Natural Resources, Sunyani, and University of Health and Allied Sciences, Ho. He was the board chairman of the Millennium Development Authority for Ghana's Millennium Challenge Compact 1. He was also the team lead consultant, development and preparation of Ghana's second Millennium Challenge Compact. He was the board chairman, Millennium Development Authority for Ghana's Millennium Challenge Compact 2 up to 7th January 2017, and he's a professor in the Department of Food Process Engineering, University of Ghana. Ladies and gentlemen, help me to welcome the chairman for the occasion.
The President of the Academy, Vice Presidents, and past Presidents, distinguished fellows, ladies and gentlemen, today being a holiday, I must first recognize all of you for appreciating the importance of the issues to be discussed this evening by our distinguished speakers and making time to come. You can clap for yourselves for coming and to this very special lecture, which should be heard by all of us who care for our health and well-being. In the past 2 days, the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences and its public forum has had excellent discussions on non-communicable diseases. The first day on Monday looked at the magnitude of the problem and causes. We also had a detailed lecture on changing nature of the problem and how it impacts on the economy, our own personal and national, the effects of the non-communicable diseases. Yesterday, we had very detailed and practical lectures on hypertension, the silent killer, various types of cancers, and also on mental health. This evening, the final and third day of the public forum, we have two distinguished speakers to speak on the social and institutional responses to what we have heard the last 2 days. Our first speaker will speak on wellness and lifestyle changes, and our second speaker will speak on redesigning healthcare systems. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, our first speaker is Professor Ajiman Bedu Akosa, a fellow of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences. Let's welcome Professor Ajiman Bedu Akosa.
The President of the Academy, past presidents, vice presidents, council members, distinguished fellows, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. the first and second day, I realized that the attendance was certainly not representative of our society. And I believe that this is a lecture that should be heard by pretty much everybody. And therefore, I decided to up onto the social media and look at pictures, show pictures of where the other side lives, so that you all take them into consideration. This is somebody moving to the Bolga market. And you can see on a bike, he has virtually all his animals displayed in a very pictorial way. All these are chickens heading towards the Bolga market. Of course, this is a man on his bike, but accompanying him on the bike are pigs for sale. This is going to the market, and this is their means of transportation. Now, you see, we here are certainly not representative, and I want all of us to appreciate that. This again is on the way to Bolga market, and what does she have to sell? It's really on her back. Of course, this is, again, not only does he have the cow, but he's got the feed for the cow. If we talk lifestyle and we talk wellness, then you've got to take all these into consideration. This is young ladies and young gentlemen. This is Africa. This is Africa. And what you see and what you do might not necessarily be representative of the society of which you're a part. Mr. Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, wellness is how healthy you are and how well and happy you feel. It therefore has two major components: your health and how you feel. And I said how happy you feel. And today's lecture will begin to address some of the issues that faces all of us. Let me say that I have been so disturbed by almost the epidemic crisis that we have allowed ourselves into non-communicable diseases. And I say this all the time, that anywhere else, the entire medical establishment would have been called to order to address the issues. It is frightening that you can go from a prevalence of 1% in the 60s to almost 50% in 2018, and yet nobody does anything about it. And in hypertension, you can go from 0.2% to almost close to 10%, and nobody does anything about it. And I say that we are in an epidemic crisis. If you had X number of cholera or X number of Ebolas, everybody will be frightened about it. But in this crisis environment, we're all so happy to just continue to move on. What are the risk factors that plague all of us? And there are modifiable factors and there are unmodifiable factors. The modifiable factors are really where we all attempt to intervene. And here you can read inadequate physical activity, poor dietary behavior, poor sleep, poor sanitation and hygienic practices, poor quality water and air. And I'm told today is Air Pollution Day. And let us all bear that in mind. Poor housing, a weak health delivery system, tobacco use, alcohol use, and I just want to emphasize, because of the young ones here, consumption of energy-dense drinks. These days, the pattern is that you're going to drink whiskey, you mix it with an energy drink. And the energy drinks contain calories, so much calories that even sleep gets disturbed. And yet, that is the order of the day. Energy drinks are being sold on the streets, and everybody gets energy drinks. Drivers of commercial vehicles, that is all they drink, in addition to the Asra and all the other things that they do. But these things are important. Now, they are unmodifiable, or they used to be thought of as unmodifiable risk factors. But human ingenuity has contrived to make these things imminently modifiable. I say that if you take age, for example, age is not now determined by looking at anybody's face, because the plastic surgeons can stretch your neck and stretch your face so that even at 70, you can pretend to be 40. Sex, we thought you couldn't change, but these days, men become women, women become men. So human ingenuity, what we thought was unmodifiable, are these days modifiable. For inheritable diseases, I've chosen the color of the eyes. It used to be an inherited color. But you see somebody who has black eyes, and all of a sudden you see hair, especially, and she's got hazel or green, or probably if she's in to do damage, red contact lenses. And that is how you will see her, and you think that the eyes are red. Inheritable diseases. These days, people with sickle cell, SSSC, they undergo bone marrow transplant. They virtually irradiate the entire bone marrow and give them a bone marrow transplant, and they do not then have the SS and the SC anymore. So these things, as unmodifiable, human ingenuity has contrived to make all this modifiable. Now, let's talk about hypertension. I think yesterday, Professor Planjuru, and he's here, said a lot about hypertension. In the 50s and 60s, it really was not a problem in this part of the world. And we'll give reasons why it wasn't a problem. So you had work that showed about 1 to 2% prevalence. Work that, different types of work show different prevalence rates. And it's gone up to almost 50% among males. If you take adult males and you chance, and anywhere I've been, I ask my friends, how many of you are hypertensive? And invariably, it is more than 50%. You might say that my friends are people who probably have the various diseases, but I tell you, once upon a time, it used to be a disease of affluence, but no more. In the 70s, Barker's hypothesis claimed that it was probably even a disease of the poor, because you are pregnant, or mother is pregnant, a poor mother, the child in the womb has very little to eat, child is born, and in our part of the neck of the woods, even mother's breast has very little. The body is such that it would squeeze everything out of the mother to protect the child. And yet, as soon as mother feels they can add food to complementary food, it is cocoa dosed with a lot of sugar. So a child at 3 months is now presented with a calorie overload. And that is the hypothesis that leads all of us into non-communicable diseases. Now, let me go back. So this is where we are today. But I'm saying that look at where we were in the 60s and look at where we are now. And anybody can tell me that we are not in epidemic crisis? Of course we are. But this is not communicable diseases, so everybody is quiet about it. Now, one of the major complications of hypertension is strokes. Eddington in 1954 at Kolebu Teaching Hospital morgue found 2% of autopsies had stroke. In 72 to 81, Professor J.T. Anim, working in the same mortuary, realized that death from strokes had increased to 11%. 1994-98, Professor Redu and Professor Nyame found 11%. And medical audit study in Komfanochi Teaching Hospital found 13.2%. So, as a complication of hypertension, the numbers are increasing. And let me say that if you take those who are hypertensive, in other words, they have been diagnosed as hypertensive, but those who are waiting in the lobby, waiting to be diagnosed as hypertensive, their numbers are even frightening. So yes, they have sustained BPs, they have not bothered to go and check, or even they checked, they are borderline, and doctors are hedging, not to give them a label. But I'm saying that population is even huge. And from yesterday and even the first day, we're told that awareness, even those who are hypertensive, what proportion of them know they're hypertensive? We used to say 90% of hypertensives don't know they're hypertensive, and of those who know they're hypertensive, 90% of them are not on any serious medication. So you can see the population that can predispose to strokes. It's a very huge population. The next is diabetes. Again, this is the evidence as we have it. 1950, Silas Dodu in Accra, 0.4%. 1964, Silas Dodu in Ho, 0.2%. Professor Albert Amoa, 2002, 64%. The Accra Women Study, 83%. The Civil Servant Study, 9.1%. And again, the number of people who have impaired glucose tolerance and impaired fasting blood glucose is about twice the population of those who have it. So again, these are people waiting to be diagnosed as diabetics. And of course, they don't know they are diabetics. So what do they drink? Energy drinks. Because energy drinks is fashionable. Let's go to cancers. These are the common cancers amongst males and females: liver, prostate, lymphomas, bladder, stomach, pancreas. For females, breast, cervix, lymphomas, liver, ovary, pancreas, and stomach. We did some work, and out of 27,316 autopsies from 1990 to 1999, we had 6.8% of the autopsy cases as from cancer. Earlier work by Eddington in 1956 found 4.3% of their 4,392 autopsies with cancer. And Professor Yaltete, 2001 to 2003, out of 14,034 autopsies, found 7.9% from cancers. So all the non-communicable diseases are on the rise. Well, obesity, overweight and obesity, I think it was discussed on day one, the numbers are increasing. Those who are overweight, great BMI greater than 25, close to about 43%. Those who are obese, greater than 30, about 12%. And there is an urban-rural dichotomy, obviously, but the rural persons are not doing much better. Now, Ghana, currently, we are in 3 transitional challenges. There's a demographic transition, which is a changing of population from a youthful, largely rural, with high fertility, to an aging, urbanized, and with low fertility. I think the last census clearly showed that there were more people living in urban and peri-urban areas compared to those living in the rural areas. The next is the epidemiological transition, where we are moving from a society of deaths from communicable diseases, infectious diseases, to one in which deaths are increasingly from chronic degenerative diseases, and these are the non-communicable diseases. And then again, we are also in a nutritional transition, where we are rapid change from traditional diet to foreign, highly processed diet. These days, most people have instant noodles rather than cocoyam and kontomire. It's probably easier to do instant noodles, 5 minutes, and dinner is ready. But what have you gained? Not much. Now, the recommended diet. And let me say something. We used to hear, let me quote Dr. Kwampofu, who says, you challenge traditional knowledge at your peril. There used to be a saying that food that you did not meet in your mother's kitchen, you don't eat. But there is justification for that, you know. A child is born and you acquire your gut flora, your intestinal bacteria, through the birth passage from your mom. So as you grow, the intestinal flora is, in a sense, the intestinal flora of the family. And the intestinal flora is there because that is what does the final phase of digestion. So food that goes from the stomach to the small intestines gets into the large intestine, where it spends a lot more time. It is this gut flora that works on the food. So if you've eaten vegetables, for example, the cuticle of the vegetable can only be broken down by these intestinal bacteria. Now, you begin to change your food. Your gut flora begins to change. And it changes not for the better, but for the worse. So you are now eating not the recommended diet of, I'm saying, fermented, unpolished, high-fiber carbohydrates. Cassava, cocoyam, yam, brobe or cocoa. Those are what I call the unpolished or unpolished rice, millet, sorghum. These are the unpolished high-fiber carbohydrates. And if they are fermented, even the better. And I'll tell you why fermentation is such a useful process in all societies. And I want to use the word primitive societies as using the word primitive to mean closer to nature. Not necessarily derogatory, but it is primitive, being closer to nature. We are supposed to eat at least 5 portions of varieties of fruits and vegetables a day. And yet, in Ghana, very few people eat fruits. And vegetables certainly on the decline. We've always thought that probably we say non-fat diets and we are not supposed to eat fat. But the human body needs 60 grams of fat every day. And I am saying today that the fats that we eat is the cause of our increasing non-communicable diseases. Quite apart from the fact that, yes, we are physically inactive, etc., etc. But I say, and this is my hypothesis, that we are into a slow poisoning mode. What has changed? Apart from, if you go to the village, they still eat those foods. They still eat the fermented, unpolished, high carbohydrate. They still eat their vegetables. But the hypertension and diabetes and cancers haven't left them. Because the oil they use in cooking has changed. In the days when we had palm kernel oil, coconut oil, palm oil, shea butter, I would say that we ate the oils that the body is able to use. And I'll explain that point a little further. And I'm saying that the 60 grams of fat should be type 1 and type 2 fats. And I'll explain what these type 1 and 2 fats. Eat fish and meat and use fermented fish and meat for soups and sauces. Kobe and momone. Those were the spices that our mothers and grandmothers used. And we think we're sophisticated and we're moving out of that. And I'll explain why those things are necessary. Drink plenty of water, almost 6 to 8 glasses a day. There's somebody who has virtually put out a social media statement in my name. I don't know who it is, but the only thing that talked about that I realized, it wasn't me, it was fasting. I don't fast, so I wouldn't advise anybody to fast. But hey, if you can fast, good for you. Don't skip breakfast because it gives you energy for the day. We always say, eat breakfast like a king, eat lunch like a prince, and eat dinner like a pauper. The Chinese will say, give your dinner to your worst enemy. In other words, don't go and sleep on a full stomach. Use not more than 5 grams per day of iodized salt. Ghana, we eat too much salt. And incidentally, we've all moved from rock salt to what is purely sodium chloride. And that is the difficulty. When we say salt is bad for you, it is essentially that chemically induced salt, sodium as chloride. But if you eat rock salt, it has magnesium, it has potassium, it has so many other minerals in it. And we would say, let's go back. Let's go back to the rock salt. Salt is necessary. Cook with it. Don't add salt at the table. That is the advice. So whatever has come out of the kitchen, don't add more. It's been cooked and it's virtually, flavored the meal. Don't add salt at table. Now, type 1 fat. Type 1 fat is high levels of small and medium chain saturated fatty acids of not less than 15%. And in type 1 fat, there is no trans fat and very little polyunsaturated fats. We will get to the sources and we'll get to the other types. What are the sources of type 1 fat? Butter, breast milk. Breast milk. If nature did not intend that we will eat type 1 fat, you think nature will put type 1 fat in breast milk? Of course not. But that is where you get type 1 fat. Coconut oil, palm kernel oil, egg yolk, fermented foods. And again, I'll talk about it. Fermented grains, you have ahe, medan. You have pito, you have fermented corn and dough, and all the things that we use for tio safi, all our traditional foods are all fermented. Fermented fruits, fermented vegetables, tubers and tree parts, and then fermented fish, meat, kobe, and mamoni. Type 2 fats. These are very high levels of preferred saturated palmitic and stearic acids and the monounsaturated oleic acids. This is 90% of that. And no or very little polyunsaturated fats. The sources, again, organic butter, organic fresh milk, virgin palm oil, virgin shea butter, virgin olive oil. I mean, we sit in this country and people tell us palm oil is no good, but olive oil is good. I mean, they are all type 2 fats. Olive oil is produced in the Mediterranean, palm oil is produced in the tropics. But we can sit here and allow people to tell us that palm oil is no good, but olive oil is good. The difference is that one has even a higher smoke factor than the other. You heat palm oil, it's a little more stable. You heat olive oil, you mess it up. And yet Ghanaians use it to fry onions and make stew, when all you are supposed to do is finish the food and dose it with olive oil. We learn, we don't learn properly. All right? Organic animal fat. Then type 3. Type 3 is industrial produced. Let's face it. The Western world realized that all their oils were tropical oils. They were importing. And they needed to make sure that they can produce their own oils. So, Industrial Revolution put seeds in machines and produced vegetable oils. And they came back to come and tell us that your tropical oils are no good. It is our vegetable oils that are good. But these vegetable oils, let me tell you now that the body does not know how to produce it. And therefore the body doesn't know how to use it. So if you are born and you are breastfeeding, and we say exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months, you are giving your child type 1 fat, or at best type 2 if it is skimmed. Type 2 fat. There's no type 3 fat in the human breast, unless, of course, you've been eating polyunsaturated fat forever. Now, sheep is a herbivore. It eats grass. But if it's too much grass, it forms subcutaneous fat. It forms fat in the muscle. Those fats are type 1 fats. They tell us it is no good. When the sheep doesn't have food to eat, what does it do? It falls on a subcutaneous fat, and that is what it uses to process for energy. They know how to use it, and they know how to produce it. What is industrially produced, they do know how to use it. Now, to use type 3 oils, the body has got to increase cholesterol level. You've got to pair type 3 fat with cholesterol before the body can use it. And I'll explain further. Now, this is why fermentation is such a very important process. Fermentation is the source of short-chain saturated acetic acid. Now, combinations of the short-chain saturated acetic acid forms 5 short medium-chain saturated fatty acids: butyric acid, caproic, caprylic, capric, and lauric. These 5 combine to form 2 sets of long-chain fatty acids. The first one is 3 saturated long-chain: myristic, palmitic, and stearic. And this is what is used to form the cell membranes of every cell in your body. Every cell, a rigid, non-permeable cell membrane. That is what brings the intactness of your body. You use type 3. In the absence of type 1, type 2, the type 3 then adds to cholesterol, and your cell membrane is permeable. And that is why, at the cellular level, people say diabetes is a mitochondrial deficiency disease, because the mitochondria, which is the energy organelle in your cell, is losing all its vital ingredients because it is semi-permeable. It forms 2 monounsaturated long-chain fatty acids, palmitoleic and oleic, and that forms what is called the cytosol, the fluid within the cell, and that is what allows for the easy transportation within the cell. So, as far as type 1 and type 2 fat, they have uses in the body. The industrial creation type 3. And when did Ghana get type 3 fat? 1966, US, America, Ghana, friendship, silver cans, silver gallons. After 66 school, that was the beginning of America and US friendship. What do you think they were doing to us? And you go back and find out the first case of heart attack in America. All these years they've been using pork lard and beef tallows to cook, to fry their chips, to do everything. They were importing tropical oils. In 1910, they started using vegetable oils. And in 1923, the first classical case of myocardial infarction, heart attack, was diagnosed. It could not have been due to type 1 fat, when they've used pork lard for all these years. And I tell you, in the 60s and 70s, there was all this Framingham report, nurses survey, and all that. The evidence was dotted. And that is why today, to believe scientists, once upon a time, we felt scientists, what did you do? You have an aim, you have method, you have resource, and you conclude. What did not fit in, you couldn't say. But at least, let's use tobacco as an example. Tobacco scientists were prepared to tell the world that there was inconclusive evidence between tobacco and cancer. And for 40 years, the world prevaricated. We're not certain. Until the WHO found evidence and said, no, there is now conclusive evidence, and that was the first public health, act that came out of the WHO. So scientists necessarily cannot be trusted. And all the evidence, and I tell you, all the books will tell you that type 3 oil is what you should eat. WHO says every country should work to reduce their trans fat. Again, this is where the WHO hedged. Because let me face it, nobody can hit American businesses, and not with Trump. Long before they couldn't, because they are the top financiers of the UN and WHO. And when it gets to American business, that is when you see WHO stands back a little bit. We're all there when we're talking about sugar we couldn't go the whole hog. If it's not white sugar, then they'll tell you, brown sugar. Same. They've just caramelized it, all right, into brown sugar. So let me say here that our grandfathers and fathers and mothers before us ate coconut oil, they ate palm kernel oil, they ate shea butter, they ate palm oil. And in Ghana, the longest surviving people live on the Kwahu, Afajato, and the Kuyapem ridges. Apart from the height, what do they eat? Palm oil. And they survive longer than those of us here who, by virtue of our education, think that palm oil is bad and will swap it with olive oil. Higher cost, low smoke factor, and don't fry it. Just put it on salad. You can put coconut oil on salad and it tastes very good. Anything fried with palm kernel oil stays good for a much longer time. Vegetable oil goes rancid very, very quickly. All right? So, again, that makes the plasma membrane, and then this makes the cytosol. Now, a lot of the work that I'm going to present from here comes from a report that we did for the Ministry of Health when Honorable Sherry Aite was the minister. And as soon as we finished the work, she had been moved. And I tell you, up to today, no minister has received our report because the evidence for them was such that they couldn't. And I tell you, USAID, DFID, Unilever, all prevailed on them that this report should not come out. And the report never came out. But I'm telling you, this is the evidence as we have it. And part of it, we did survey as to what people ate. 82.5% said they didn't enjoy eating fatty foods, but the songs tell us, obey the of at least people eat it. Anyway, this is parroting from Manifest. 76% used imported refined oils. These are the type 3. And one of the things that has been very frightening is that this country and in Africa, we can accept gallons of oil. And the only statement on it is vegetable oil. Which vegetable? It's not corn oil, it's not sunflower oil, it's not safflower oil, it's not canola oil, it's just vegetable oil. And yet, we are prepared to admit it into this country. And a lot of evidence points to the fact that oil that has been used to fry chips outside is taken back to the laboratory, it is bleached and deodorized, and is put in drums and sold to Africa. I tell you, all that is trans fat. Trans fat, any vegetable oil that gets heated once, twice, 3 times, is not oil that can be used. But here, fried yam, how many times do you use the vegetable oil to cook? The vegetable oil that is already trans fat, kelewele, fried fish, chicken, all the things that are out in town. And for me, what kills me is the shito. When they've used the oil and they don't want to discard it, then they use it for shito. Damaging. I eat shito in my house. Right. 76% of Ghanaians add sugar to their food. 70% add even not only 1 teaspoon, 2 teaspoons. Can you do Milo? You're doing Milo that is already more than 22.5% sugar content, and you add 2 teaspoonfuls. Now, 78.4 add bouillon cubes. 33% use salt at table. 94% use white rice. This is polished rice, refined carbohydrate. 70.6% use white flour products. Again, refined products. Look at a country like Ghana. We don't produce wheat. And yet, the only flour that we want for our bread is wheat flour. We've got cassava flour. We've got corn flour. Nobody wants it. Nobody wants it. Even sweet potato flour can be used for bread. Nobody wants it. Wheat flour. Now, it's a country that imports, our import bill for food and other related things, almost 1 billion. And our exports of food is in the order of 100 million. And we import all these things all these things, even though we produce them and they do not in any way impact properly on our health. In Ghana, most beverages have more than the recommended 22.5 grams per 100 grams of sugar. Our soft drinks, fruit juices, cereals, energy drinks, all of them, including tomato paste and some evaporated milk, have more sugar than is recommended in this country, but all of it is on the market. Now, I think this is a slide that sums a lot of things. Blood pressure makes up 13% of risk factors for global mortality. Tobacco use, 9%. High blood glucose, 6%. Physical inactivity, 6%. Overweight and obesity, 5%. Now, physical activity. And for me, this is one area that I wish I could crusade on for all Ghanaians to realize that no matter the food you eat, even if you eat rubbish food and you are physically active, your health will be good. But what do? No physical activity. All of you. When we were in school, all of us were sports people. We did a lot of sports. Now you kids in school, you do very little sports. Physical inactivity has a principal role in 21 to 25% of breast/colon cancer burden, 27% diabetes, 30% of ischemic heart disease. Regular physical activity reduces the risk of coronary heart disease and stroke, diabetes, hypertension, colon cancer, breast cancer, and depression. And yesterday we were told that depression causes a lot of problems for all of us. It reduces mortality risk by 20 to 30%, and it is fundamental to the energy balance and weight control. It is the only expenditure on the income expenditure curve of weight control. Income is everything you eat, food, drink, everything else that comes into your body. The only expenditure is physical activity. So if you don't do it, then yes, you have a lot of income in your weight control bank account, and that will put on a lot of weight. I said this how many years ago? It's now about 25 years ago. I went to an evening of cosmetologists, and I'd just driven from Cape Coast visiting my daughter. And one of the things when I saw all these cosmetologists, beauty therapists all coming in, I said to them, I've just come from Wesley Girls. And all the girls look really slim. So let's say from the age of 18 to about 30, 35, all the Ghanaian women, lateral diameter, AP diameter, where AP is anterior-posterior. And I went and said that, and they said, this guy, we've called you to come and talk to us. We didn't come and tell you to come and insult us. Now, benefits of physical activity, and there are plenty. Reduction in pulse rate and regularity, increase heart muscle function, increases general muscular function, and decreases intramuscular fat, improves joint movability, improves contractility of blood vessels, and therefore good venous return, improves respiration, inhalation and exhalation, improves digestion, increases body uptake of blood sugars, and improves general well-being and increased fitness. That is why I say, if everything I've talked about diet, you don't give a damn about it, you cannot say you don't give a damn about physical activity. Improves mental function, improves sleep and body repair mechanisms. You know, when I was a medical student, one of the things that they kept telling us was that there were some oncogenes, RBs, RB, P53, Ki67, all those oncogenes. And you ask yourself, what were all those things for? They can either prepare you for cancer, or these are the ones, and the minerals and vitamins, these are the ones that come at night when you are asleep to repair your body. So if you don't sleep well, body repair is inadequate, and you begin to build up on what is called sleep deficit. But it is in actual fact the body's inability to repair the damage. If you slept well, and we'll show how long we can sleep for, you know, the body has a way of repairing all the minor abnormalities that has happened during the day. But of course, if you don't sleep well, you carry all those things. Now, this is how we advertise everything. It improves sexual function. In Ghana, all the adverts has to do with improving sexual function. If it doesn't, then Ghanaians won't buy. Now, again, it reduces the bad cholesterol and increases the good cholesterol. And it reduces the blood's ability to clot. All right, so thrombogenicity, and reduces deep vein thrombosis and cerebral and coronary thrombosis. Now, we conducted some work among schools. And for me, this is a frightening bit. 12 schools in Accra, less than 40% of Ghanaian children and youth participate in any amount of physical activity that can produce any meaningful outcome. And I think, was it the first day that Professor Techo Amenu asked how we're linking in with MMDAs, district assemblies and all that. I think this is where GAAS should meet NDPC and begin to strategize. Because in this is spatial infrastructure. If you live outside, you've got to go to the bus stop. You will walk to the bus stop. You take the tube, the train, anywhere. You would walk. By the time you've gone to town and back, the amount of walk that you would have done naturally by the system itself ensures that you're in good health. Here, these days, Trotsky is everywhere. Is that not so? For those of you who don't know Trotsky, it's Trotro. You know, you fellows, you are getting yourself out of the system. You know, Trotsky is Trotro. You know, all right. Now, WHO recommends that 5 to 17-year-olds, this is error, year-olds, require 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous intensity physical activity daily. And in Ghana, only 13% of Ghanaian children meet that recommendation. You start very early. You are not doing any physical activity. You are building yourself for hypertension. You are building yourself for diabetes. You are building yourself for cancer. Hey, so those of you who are privileged to be here, physical activity. Get up early in the morning, 5 o'clock. Go do a little run, come back, come and wash. In the evening, before you go for supper, do a little walk around the school. All right? But you're out there, just, you know. All right? We shall meet you later on, 15% of Ghanaian parents did not consider non-sport physical activity as important. 10% of our population are disabled. There's no specific program to address their physical activity. Then tobacco. Single most important preventable risk to human health in developed countries and an important cause of premature death worldwide. Smoking causes plenty cancers. Plenty. There's more there. Cancer of the lungs is what we know. And as the cause, smoking causes 90% of lung cancer deaths in men and 80% of all cancers deaths in women. There are more deaths, tobacco causes more deaths than HIV, legal drugs, alcohol, RTA, road traffic accidents, suicides, and murders combined. All of them. That is how bad tobacco is. Alcohol. Alcohol is fermentation of sugars and starches. Alcohol provides 7 calories per, that is energy, calories per gram. It is food, but of no nutritional value. In other words, it gives you calories. That is why alcohol is a risk factor for hypertension. It increases your calorie load, but gives you no nutritional value at all. Again, it causes chronic diseases of liver, pancreas, various cancers, causes high blood pressure, psychological disorders, unintentional injuries, violence. It harms the developing fetus, fetal alcohol syndrome, sudden infant death syndrome, and of course, alcohol abuse and dependency. Now, these are the types of alcohol. For those of us who drink the amber nectar, that is beer, it has 3 to 10% of alcohol per weight. This is alcohol by weight. Wines, 8 to 14 alcohol by weight. Fortified wines, 16 to 20% alcohol by weight. Liqueurs, spirits, that, as for our local appetition, is probably about 90% or so. Now, the whole exercise is to make you healthy and is to make you happy. And one of the things that I want to say is that in all this, naturally, is stress. And overcoming stress becomes very, very important. There's rest. We need to rest. All work and no play. There's a basis for that. Long walks. Hey, take long walks in school. You and your friends, just do walks. Regular exercises, very important. And you need not go to the gym. It's just walking in your compound, in your house. Walk around your compound. Not, bring me this one, bring me this one, bring. No. You sit down and it's like that. It's like the market women. They will eat every food that comes and they will hardly get up, except they are going to, even when they are going to pee, they will cover themselves with cloth and they will use a chamber pot and do something. Listening to good music, very relaxing. Reading good books, very relaxing. Watching good films and comedy. Comedy will make you laugh. Very healthy. Meditation, all right? 10, 20 minutes every morning, very good for you. Massages, if you can afford it, go for a massage once a week. Your body becomes oiled. Let me put it that way. Of course, reduce your workload, all right? Too much work. And create time with friends as a support network. We don't meet our friends in our old age. And that is why fellows who don't come to academy meetings, you don't get the opportunity to meet your friends. All right? Fellows, come to academy meeting. Come and meet your friends. Exchange little small talk and then move on. Again, if you're able to increase your emotional intelligence, you know your body, you know yourself, you can control your emotions, and you value the emotions of others. That is, in a sense, what tells you that you are emotionally intelligent. Now, Madam Chair, I've decided that I will show a few videos just to buttress the point. And this is about sleep. Getting enough sleep. 40% of adults don't sleep well. This is from CDC. Sleep as a public health epidemic. We make sleep a priority in our life. Newborns, they will sleep anyway. Whatever you do, they will sleep. All of you wait and identify yourselves in it. Well, you deprive sleep, weight gain, hypertension, all those things. Let me move on. Why? You are enjoying it? All right.
That's why Indian people never play villains in movies. Have you noticed
This
that?
is comedy.
All the big movies, James
Everybody
Bond
should
and Born
laugh.
Identity, you never have Indian villains. Ever, ever, ever. Just doesn't work out. Because Indian people don't have that vibe. They'll use other people, from the Asias and the Middle East and everything. They'll use Chinese and they'll use the Arabs and they love the Muslims now. But they'll never use Indian people. They just don't have the dangerous sound to them. It's always got to be the classic scene in the movie, It's got to be the United Nations gathered around a table. Then on the big screen comes that terrorist announcement. The assistant runs in. Sir, it's a message from the terrorist Boris. And they switch on the screen. Pew, and then Boris comes on. Hello, United Nations. It is I, Boris. Boris Kablechnikov. I have placed bombs all over the world in major cities. And if you don't pay me $1 billion, I will make world go kaboom. You've got 1 hour. До свидания. And they'd be like, oh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? They'd be scrambling for the money. They'd be, oh, what are we going to do? You'd never have an Indian guy doing that. Just wouldn't be the same. Assistant running into the room, sir, it's the infamous terrorist, Rajesh. They'd switch on the big screen, pew, and there he'd be. Is it on? Okay. Hello? Hello, UN. Hello, namaste, namaste. Namaste. How are you, uncle, auntie? Pleasure. My name is Rajesh, and I have placed bombs strategically all over the world. Now, if y'all don't pay me...
You get it. We need to have a lot more comedy.
When there is an opportunity, get together with old classmates, old colleagues, and old friends. The gathering is not just about eating. It's just that there's not much time left. Money kept in the banks may not be really yours. When it's time to spend, just spend. Treat yourself well as you're getting old. Whatever you feel like eating, just eat. Important to be happy.
Be happy.
Foods which are good for health, eat often and more. But that's not everything. Things which are not good for health, eat less once in a while, but do not abstain from them totally.
These things are all very important, but I want us to
Treat
look at the
sickness
last one.
with optimism.
The last one
whether
for
you are
me
poor
would make
or
all
rich.
of us very happy.
Everyone
It
has
is
to go through birth,
1966
aging,
Commonwealth Games.
sickness, and death.
Or is it 65 or 64?
There is no
1964 Commonwealth Games.
That's life.
Down on the track, the relay runners getting ready for the final of the men's 4x110 yards relay. On the inside,
For those of you who didn't know,
Jamaica,
Ghana used to win gold medals
lane
in
2,
athletics.
England,
Huh?
their lead
Now
off man
look at
is
this.
David Jones. Lane 3, Australia, their first man, Gary Eddy. Lane 4 is Nigeria.
Lane 4,
5,
Nigeria.
Wales, led off by Terry Davis. Lane 6, Trinidad and Tobago.
Lane 6,
7,
Trinidad and
Canada.
Tobago.
And lane 8, right on the outside, the favourites, Ghana. Their first man to go is
Yeah, yeah.
Eddy.
Look at that.
Ghana already set a new
If
Commonwealth record.
wellness is to
Games
make you
record of
happy,
the heats of 39.9,
then these are some of the
also
things or
equal
moments
the Commonwealth record.
that will make you
So the lineup from the inside: Jamaica, lane 2 England, lane 3 Australia, lane 4 Nigeria, lane 5 Wales, lane 6 Trinidad, lane 7 Canada, lane 8 Ghana. The men's 4x110 yards relay final. Very first time Ghana got away well, and so too the Canadian also going well as David Jones is losing ground, though he's going back, and the Australian going right up. Right on the outside, though, it's Ghana, also going well Trinidad, and Australia closing too. And Ghana running beautifully on the outside, the favourites going extremely well, and Wales are going well through Lynn Davis. Lynn Davis streaking down the back straight. And Ghana way out in front, right on the outside. Ghana lead.
See
Wales
baton
look like
changing,
being second
proper-
at the moment.
proper
And
baton
Wales
changing.
with Australia coming. The Australians closing up, and Jamaica. And it's Ghana now leading. A lovely for Ghana. Australia second, Wales third, and Jamaica fourth. And it's Ghana, Jamaica, Australia, Wales. Ghana wins. Second Jamaica, third Australia, fourth Wales, fifth Canada, sixth Nigeria, seventh
Mr.
England,
Chairman,
and eighth Trinidad.
distinguished ladies and gentlemen,
Beautiful running there by the Ghanaians.
I have tried to let us all
Splendid
appreciate
performance. They were the favourites for that.
that
They justified
wellness
their favouritism.
is how healthy you are.
Waiting now for the victory ceremony for
And
the
how
men's
well
4x110
and happy
yards relay.
you
And we
feel.
still don't know who's got the silver medal.
The
Ghana
risk
takes
factors for
the
health
gold medal,
and
new
the
games
things that we
record,
all need
39.8 seconds.
to make us
Let's
happy.
Just listen now to the PA announcement.
I have
to
tried
whether Australia got
in
second
45
place or
minutes to virtually splash through.
Second, Jamaica.
Well, we've done our bit. It is important that as human beings we eat well. Eating well doesn't mean you spend a lot of money. Cocoyam is not expensive. Cassava, bancha pesie, and ntroa froy is not expensive. Kuntumre is not expensive. Okro is not expensive. Beans is not expensive. But if you want to leave all that and do pizza, then you will pay the price for it. Because I tell you that your gut intestinal bacteria don't know pizza. They know cocoyam, they know kuntumre, they know okro, they know tiosafi, they know fufu, they know all that. But they don't know pizza. They don't know instant noodles. You saw that one, he said, the good food, eat a lot of it. The ones that are not healthy, occasionally. If occasionally you feel like a pizza and you go and eat pizza or instant noodles, but every day, because 5 minutes, noodles are ready. No nutritional value. All the things that we've talked about. One of the cardinal things that I say is that if you do not exercise, you are not in good health. For me, it's a very categorical statement. If you do not exercise, you are not in good health. If you exercise, you are on the road to good health. It is important that if we take nothing at all from my first lecture, physical inactivity is bad for the body. The body was not created to sit down. The body was not created to sleep. The body was created to walk. That is why we are the only species that have what we call a nuchal ligament here, and we have the Achilles heel. So we stand, and we can stand for a very long time. So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman, this is my message to you all. You can eat rubbish, but if you maintain a certain level of physical activity, your health will be good. If 13% of Ghanaian children do not meet the recommended level of 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous activity, then if we are in a crisis now, I hate to think of what will happen when I'm gone. Thank you.
Let's put our hands together again for Professor Akosa in taking us through quite a broad area of nutrition and health and related dynamics. And the last is his statement about physical activity, the importance of physical activity for all of us to maintain good health. Thank you very much, Professor Akosa. Our second speaker is rounding it up in this forum, redesigning the healthcare system. All the things we have heard from the last 2 days and also from Prof. Akosa, what is our healthcare system doing to address them? He may take us through this in this presentation. We are indeed privileged to have for our second speaker, Dr. Koku Awoonor, who is the Director of the Policy Planning and Monitoring and Evaluation Directorate at the Ghana Health Service, a position he assumed in the year 2016. He has had an illustrious career in medicine in this country. In addition to being a specialist in public health, he's an architect of Ghana's community-based health planning and services strategy. He became a fellow of the Ghana College of Physicians and Surgeons in 2009 and a member of various national and international professional organizations. He has several publications in well-known journals, including Studies in Family Planning, the Bulletin of the World Health Organization, and Health Policy and Planning. Ladies and gentlemen, join me to welcome our next speaker to speak to us on redesigning healthcare system, Dr. Koku Awoonor.
Thank you very much, and good evening to all of you. Shalom. I say shalom because I just came back from Israel. And from the airport here to my house, I was in a little bit of depression because Israel is a desert. But they are feeding a lot of the countries. And I'm surprised how their development went. I think they are here and we are here. But I think we'll get there. We need to do some trans. I am sorry if I repeat some of because I have not been here the first 2 days, so forgive me if I repeat some of the statistics. But I'll come back to the question whether we need to redesign our healthcare system or whether we have already done that, but probably we are not doing what we are supposed to be doing effectively. Now I'll talk about the burden of disease. I'll talk about the trends, talk about some Ghana policy responses, some of the challenges that we have. How do we think that we need to start looking at non-communicable diseases, and what role will that play in our primary healthcare strategy? Some policy responses, and provide an overview of why I think that the way to go is to look at our primary healthcare system, which is the bedrock of one of our national health strategies, and then provide some roadmap to some of the work that is being done already in terms of NCDs and how that work can form the basis of the change that we want to see in our healthcare system. Now, I want to start with a statement that was one of the policy statements by Ministry of Health as far back as 1977, which is almost 42 years ago. I'm sure most of you have heard of Alma Ata, which is the Goal for All 2000, but I'm so happy that one of my bosses is here, Dr. Asamoah. Now, in 1977, the Ministry of Health stated that most disease problems, at that time it was called National Health Policy Unit of the ministry, stated that most problems that cause the high rates of illness and death among Ghanaians are preventable and curable if diagnosed promptly by simple, basic, and primary health care procedures. The major objective of the ministry, therefore, are to extend the coverage of basic health services and primary health services to most people possible. 1977. In order to provide this extent of coverage, it will be necessary to engage the cooperation and authorization of the people themselves at the community level. It will also involve virtual curtailment of the sophisticated hospital construction and renovation, and will require a reorientation and redeployment of at least some of the health personnel from hospital-based activities to community-oriented activities. I'll come back to that because this has a link with what Professor Kusa just said. I think that in 2000, myself and Professor Kusa went around the whole country to visit a lot of our community health nurses and to see what needs to be done when this policy, having in mind what this policy was all about, as far back as 1977. Now, if we agree that the majority of our people, 60%, lives in communities, in rural areas, that it's important that we send services to these people. I made a statement the other time. I said, look, we put up the teaching hospitals. I mean, you will agree or you will not agree. 10% of the Ghanaians go there. You put up a regional hospital, you are looking at about 20% of the population who have access to those services. You put up a district hospital, you are looking at about 30% of the population who go to any district hospital in Ghana. Of course, 254 districts, less than half of them have what is called a proper district hospital anyway. But you put down community health compounds, which is called a CHIPS compound, you are reaching about 60% of the population. And I think that is very important that we look at CHIPS program. Now, I just want to summarize, maybe like I said, some of this have been said earlier in the first 2 days, but non-communicable disease have, as even Professor Kosa just said, at listening to him and the statistics, have contributed significantly to our disease burden for more than 50 years. It is only in recent years that NCDs are getting some national attention. And even that, currently we know that NCDs contribute to the illness, disability, and death in Ghana. In fact, the burden of NCDs is projected to increase due to what Professor Kosa just mentioned: unhealthy lifestyle, rapid urbanization, and of course, aging. Now, without any prejudice to women, I picked this data just to illustrate, and the statistics might even be more than this. High proportion of women, for instance, aged between 50 to 49 years, who are overweight or obese, increased by over 400%, from 3.4% in 1993 to 15% in 2014. And I believe strongly that the current estimates are even higher. And the same apply now even to men. The proportion of children under 5 years of age who are overweight increased from less than 1% in 1988 to 5% in 2008, and we are in 2019. So given this, less than 5% of adults consume adequate amounts of food. I mean, you have, Professor has mentioned that. But given these unhealthy statistics, it is not surprising that up to 25% of Ghanaian adults have hypertension, and 3.5% or 3.4% have diabetes. Now, if you look at the 10 top all-cause of mortality in Ghana, you can see that we are having increasing. Number four place is ischemic heart diseases. Stroke follows, number 5, and diabetes. And these are the non-communicable diseases. That, if you look at these statistics, and this is about 2017, if you look at these statistics in 20, 30 years ago, you might probably not see NCDs in the top 10. So there's a changing dynamics of our disease burden and, of course, our mortality. Now, if you look at 2016 statistics, where total population at that time was 28%, 43% of that population NCDs account for 43% of all deaths. And if we recorded about 221 deaths in 2016, then you can assume that almost half, again, Professor Kosa mentioned about 50% of our mortality due to NCDs. So non-communicable disease becoming a major problem. When people, in fact, I work at PPME, so I look at the statistics every time. And when people are talking about the fact that we have double burden disease, I mentioned that we have triple burden disease. Apart from the communicable and non-communicable, RTAs and injuries are coming up so highly. And I think that, again, should be a worry for us. So you see that, the proportion of deaths due to NCDs is almost the same as the proportion of deaths due to communicable diseases. Now, there have been some global response, and I think that's where our healthcare system needs some response based on what WHO and other bodies have proposed. We know that traditionally, the Global Health Agenda had focused on ameliorating communicable diseases, maternal and child health, and I'll come back to talk about our primary healthcare system and why I think that there's a need of redesigning or reshaping in such a way that we address, because even our CHIPS program focuses on RMCH, maternal and child health. So if a community health nurse goes to the community, visit the household, all she asks of or he asks of is that, is there a pregnant woman? Is there a child? Whether there's an elderly person who has some depression, whether there is somebody who needs to hypertension, no, it's not part of the primary health strategy. And we are working now on trying to look at what do we need to do in redesigning also that in terms of achievement of what we call the universal health coverage. So chronic conditions have typically taken the backseat on the global health agenda because we thought it's a long-term, it has a long-term time horizon, non-communicable diseases were not included even in the MDGs. Of course, you will see that now with the Sustainable Development Goals, NCD is part of that, and I'll come back to that. Now in Ghana, as Prof. Sakosa just said, current tobacco smoking is about 10%, raised blood pressure about 27%, obesity about 7.5%. The probability of dying between ages of 30 and 70 years from the four main NCDs is 20%. NCDs, or non-communicable diseases, are estimated to account for, like I said earlier, 43% of our total deaths. So this is very important, and I want to commend, for the focus on NCD in this particular instance. Now, there have been some response, like I said earlier. So there is an increased focus on prevention and control policy, improve health conditions and saves lives. The 66th World Health Assembly in 2013 had a global NCD action plan 2013 to 2020. And not much has been done. We are in 2019, and that is why the focus is important now. Now, if you look at the SDGs, which is the Sustainable Development Goals, it's clearly stated that we need to reduce by 1/3 premature mortality from NCDs. And I think that is very important. So for all the things that has been said for the past 2 days, and particularly for the point that Sakosa made this evening, I think is very, very important in terms of achieving this goal. And the question is that, what are we doing in Ghana that we can have this mortality in terms of NCDs? Now, for the policy, somebody said that Ghana, we are good at actually, in fact, we have a lot of policies. We really do very, very well. If you look at the number of countries that come to Ghana, to look at our policy, to study from us. If you look at the data from Ethiopia, for instance, that came to Ghana and spent almost about 2 weeks learning about CHIEF's program. They went and redesigned it, and their statistics look much better now than Ghana. So in 1992, we had what we call a non-communicable disease control and prevention program. So the realization came in terms of focus as far back as 1992. In 2006, I'm sure those of you who remember the late Major General Koshiga at the time, brought what we call the Regenerative Health and Nutrition Program. That was very important in terms of exercise, the type of food to eat. In 2011, we had the National Strategy for Cancer Control. In 2012, we have the National Policy for the Prevention and Control of Chronic Non-Communicable Diseases. In 2017, we have Smoking Cessation Clinical Guidelines for Ghana and Tobacco Control Regulation. That end up in an LI 2247. And then in 2017, we have the National Alcohol Policy. So we have everything. We have all the, how is the implementation going? And that has always been the challenge. Now, the response to date, in my view, had certain challenges. For instance, we have the lack of knowledge and awareness of the root causes of an impact of NCDs because we don't talk about it. We are really focused on clinical care. In actual fact, we try to develop our policies in silo, and each is standing without talking to each other. And I mentioned that if you look at our primary care strategy, it's about health education, health promotion, making sure that people have the knowledge. The primary producer of health is the household. And that household is the mother who has to decide what to do, where to take the child when it's convulsing. Is it to the clinic or to the soothsayer? I work in a place where an old man or an elderly man was hailed because he's the only one in the community that treats convulsion. So there's no death from convulsion. And what he does is that when a child is convulsing, everybody rushes there. He just set up smoke, firewood. And the child is convulsing, you hold the child inhales the smoke, and the convulsion stops. Of course, the next day, too, the child died of pneumonia. But the child stopped convulsing, so everybody goes there. And it took a lot of time to get the community to understand. So I think what I'm trying to say is that you cannot do these things when you sit away from the community. It's very important to be the inadequate political will. Again, it's about our policies, implementation, absence of unified research community with the ability to influence policymakers. Because sometimes the research are standing up. I went to a conference in South Africa about 3 years ago, and there were about 14 presentations on Ghana being made by foreigners that have done a lot of research that has never been disseminated in Ghana, but has been disseminated in South Africa at the global conference. So you can imagine the kind of information that we are losing. The developed partners' preference for funding infectious diseases and short-term programs rather than, NCDs. We have a weak data collection system that will give us the data that, can tell us that, look, this is the state of our affairs in terms of NCDs as a country. We have inadequate funding. We have NCD services that are mostly offered in tertiary hospitals, which are few with varied quality of services. So in the northern region, for instance, in the upper east region, for instance, in the upper west region, you have 10, 11 doctors, and all of them are general practitioners. There's no specialist. So you can't run special clinics for diabetes, you can't run special clinics for hypertension. And so the challenge in terms of even equity in the country for certain categories. So you only get some of the service at the tertiary facilities. Then we have inadequate access to specialists, of course, low compliance of patients, high defaulter rate, as well as the gaps in the, and I'll come to talk about the NHI, because for me, that is where the major problem for tackling NCDs is. Now, in the rationale now for the need to start thinking about how do we integrate primary health care, and when I talk about NCDs, I'm just talking about focus probably on hypertension and diabetes in our primary health care system. If you look at our CHIP system, the focus has been on maternal and child health. And we did a survey last year where we assessed all the CHIPS compounds, and you will be amazed that only 14% of our 6,000 CHIPS compounds have a BP apparatus. So how community people being checked for hypertension, Now we have PhD tend to be the entry point for engagement with the health system, generally in Ghana and also other low middle income countries. Population-wide and individual interventions can reduce the burden posed by NCDs. The major NCDs can be detected early and diagnosed using simple tools. I can talk about BP apparatus, dipstick to check urine for sugar. Basic things that can be done for early detection. Now, then the family members, community members, and social networks play a very key role. So our primary healthcare system is that linkage between the community, the people, and the healthcare providers. The sole reliance on provision and maintenance of NCD services through, like I said earlier, through secondary and tertiary facilities, integrating prevention and control for NCDs into PSC is cost effective. We know that because there are basic things that can be done: education, health promotion. And then we also know that PSC improves health and stem growing health care costs and budgets. Now, what is the proposed policy response from the view of PPME, Ghana Health Service? I think that we need to start looking at, I said that we have the policies, but with the global trend in terms of the focus on NCDs and the SDGs and the UAC, what I mean, the universal health coverage, where people are having the service that they need without any barrier to financial cost. We need to update the NCD policy and response plan that should align with other national initiatives. I talk about silo. Our national health insurance loves sickness. It loves disease. Yet our primary healthcare system loves prevention. And the two don't talk to each other. And the result is that we have one policy that was doing very well in terms of our CHIPS program, eventually what NHI has done, or our national minister has done, is to collapse our CHIEFs program. And it's a fact. Because by virtue of the design of our primary care strategy, nurses are supposed to get up in the morning, see those who come to the clinic. The focus is not on clinical services, it's not on treatment. It's living in the community, understanding the culture, dynamics of the community, working with them to promote health and prevent illness. It's a wellness program, as Prof mentioned. Unfortunately, our NHI is basically a disease paradigm. So if I go to a community and I walk around 30 houses and I talk about hypertension, I talk about diabetes, I talk about you need to exercise, you need to eat well, you need to sleep well, sleep in mosquito nets, and I walk around 5-6 hours and come home, nobody gives me any money. NHI does not pay for that. Yet 6,000 CHIEFs compounds with over 10,000 nurses are in the communities working. But then if the person in the community falls down and gets stroke and admitted, NHI pays, no matter the cost. It doesn't make sense. The focus must be, how do you build a balance between prevention, and we know the dividends that prevention and health promotion brings on board. How do you balance between prevention and promotion? We need to establish and strengthen our operational NCD unit, and I'm happy the director in charge of NCDs is here. We need to improve alignment with other conventions. For instance, the agenda for NCDs, the global agenda for NCDs, we need to see how do we take advantage of that. We have to ensure a burden of disease-driven approach to resource allocation. Our funding, I think I have to say this. Our funding mechanism and resource allocation is unscientific. In actual fact, we do accelerated expenditure, what I call once the money comes, and what comes on top of our head. In actual fact, there was some fund, about 27 or 127 million, to be used to build a couple of polyclinics, but it was used to renovate one hospital in Ghana. So all the polyclinics never happened. And that is a decision of minister, very powerful person. Because once you are minister, you're very powerful. You make all the decisions. And nobody can challenge you. So when the technicians or technical people are talking about building 14 polyclinics against renovating one hospital, the hospital is more important. Of course, because it's a contract, isn't it? And there will be procurement and all that. In fact, in some instances, the equipment for the facility are even bought 2 years before the foundation is dug for the. So whether the equipment is still, for after 2 years, 3 years, it doesn't matter. It's bought. Those are the equipment, So the planning is very important. Emphasis on health promotion and protection, on pre-service and in-service training. And that is also the problem that in Ghana we try to do a lot of training after people have come out of school. I work in a district or in a region where when we introduced the new vaccines, nobody talked about, and that's from the national level. People were trained, staff were trained, but nobody trained those who were just coming out of school. I mean, the last year student, community health nurses, and they graduated 3 weeks after the training has been done, and they were posted, and they never knew about. So we had to get all of them to train again. So the lack of coordination is very important. We have to also try to increase the number of cadres with the skill to do this work. So it's always been the deviation from the policy. Our CHIEFs program talk about how do we should put community health nurses in our CHIEF zones. But because when the community health nurses, the CHIEF zone is working, NHI does not pay, but they need money for operational activities. They need money to repair motorbike. They need money to go to the field, to fuel their motorbike, to repair the motorbike, to buy water. So what has happened? But if you put an enrolled nurse in the CHIEF zone, they will prescribe. NHI will pay. So of course, it's the regional directors and the district directors are happy to put enrolled nurses. So we are turning even our preventive program, which is a primary healthcare system, into a clinical services. And so the survey that we did, we realized that instead 27% of community health nurses are in health centers and hospitals instead of being in CHIP zones. And 31% of enrolled nurses are in CHIP zones instead of being in, because by the training they cannot provide the kind of service that they are being posted to do. So, and that's a challenge. And of course, the whole area of what we call in our system task shifting, where others can perform certain tasks that they are not trained, but then provided some orientation to do. We also need to start integrating prevention and screening into our health system, which we don't do. Routine medical checkup. Anybody, if you see, I'm sure that if you go to a district hospital and the doctor, who is one person alone, have about 300 patients, and you walk in and say, I just come from medical checkup, he will walk you out of the room. He will tell you, I'm seeing sick people. You know, you are not sick, you are coming from. So again, we need that kind of, how do we integrate? Then the continuum of care, what we call the life course approach, in terms of following patients right from the first time they visit and then following through, so you can actually educate them and monitor them and see what is happening. Our referral system is so poor, and that needs a lot of work to be done on it. In terms of, I'm sure in Kolebu, people will come there and walk around for 3-4 days without seeing a doctor because it's big. And go be times if you come from a village like Kodiabe, you don't even know Kolebu, people will take you around for 2 days. And that's a challenge. So the referral system needs to, what can we do to telemedicine, teleconsultation? We need some innovations. We have to increase access to medicine. In actual fact, again, I'm talking about health insurance because we are talking about NCDs. So we develop a health insurance system to support us to remove barrier, which is cost. And yet what happens is now it's increasingly becoming clear to us, even as health providers, that the health insurance actually is telling us how to treat people, not how we should treat people because of money. Money is power. So if I go to a community health center and I see a woman in labor, complicated labor, and I do manipulation and able to deliver, and the cost of that cannot be paid because I am not supposed to go to that facility and do that kind of procedure there. That is how health operates. Now, if you treat malaria in a CHIP zone, and there are certain drugs, first-line drugs, second-line drugs, that are also not allowed to be prescribed at certain. So can a CHO see somebody with hypertension, refer the person, is seen by a specialist, is sent back to the community, and can that community health nurse follow up with the refill until such a time that the person goes back again to see the specialist? That is also not part of our healthcare system. And what are the cost drivers? What is driving the cost really is that if I'm a community health nurse and I'm in a community, I see you with malaria, for instance, and I give you Coartem, NHI pays me $1. If you go to a health center and you see a nurse or a MA or PA, that gives you also Coartem, NHI pays $5. If I go to a district hospital and I see a doctor, or a PA also sees me at the same hospital, NHI will pay $10. And if I go to a teaching hospital, maybe they'll pay $50. So the variance in even the cost creates a lot of confusion. And these are some of the things that we need to start thinking about. We need to also identify innovative and sustainable revenue streams to sustain implementation of prevention. Just because people it's prevention, so there's not much emphasis or attention on that, and that needs to be done. Now, our primary health care, I said earlier, provides us a very good opportunity for looking at the whole area of NCDs and how we can integrate it. We have a homegrown primary health care system that's been designed to fit in. We have the level C, which is the district hospital system. We have the level B, we have the level A, which is the community. And between that range, there are linkages that needs to be maximized. We have a close to client services, a national strategy that is designed in 2000 based on vigorous studies, that if you put a community health nurse and work with the community, you can achieve a better health outcome and impact. So CHIPS is positioned to provide that contact, and I think that the whole area of NCDs fit into that principle for us. So this is what Professor Kosa was trying to tell us in a very simple one slide. But it's, that basically we are looking at health and wellness within the community. And if we have the majority of our people living in communities, and this is what our CHIPS program is about, that from premature death to high-level wellness, you have that paradigm that is looking at contact in terms of following up patients, following up the population, knowing their worries, visiting them, providing information that they need to make informed decisions and choices. I talk about whether you want to send a child to a soothsayer or to the clinic, somebody needs to provide that information, and that woman or that man just need that information to be able to. So this addresses the whole paradigm that we have, and I think that if we are able to do our primary healthcare system very well, then and do well our referral system, and change the dynamics of how we provide funding in terms of our NHIA to the health sector, then that will address those challenges. There are barriers at the community level that we need to overcome, and we need to work on those. We know that at the CHIPS level, as it is now, there are no defined intervention for prevention and screening of children health centers in terms of NCDs, because the original strategy basically was on maternal and child health, mother-child healthcare. So we need some orientation of our nurses to be able to start that. Of course, I said that even for follow-up, I mean, there are certain drugs that cannot be provided at the CHIPS level. Then we have lack of a registry system that provides us, for diagnosed patients at the PC level, because then if you look at the data, most of the data are coming from the hospitals and the health centers and not from the CHIPS level, because that system is not there. And then, of course, the absence of follow-up mechanism. Now, Professor Landrul and some others are doing a great work in terms of how, taking hypertension as one way to look at that. And how do we, I talk about the things that we've done that actually provides us the opportunity, so to speak. Our 1992 Constitution talk about the right to health. We have our Act as a guarantee for implementation, and part of NCDs is part of it. We have the national policy for primary healthcare system. The national insurance is there to provide the backbone for cost in terms of money. Then we have the strategies for management and prevention of control of chronic diseases in 2012, I said earlier. We have the Ouagadougou Declaration on PSC and health system in Africa. And again, it is not distinguished between clinical services or communicable or non-communicable diseases. We have research evidence. We have the National Health Insurance, I've repeated that. We have the standard treatment guidelines. We have the essential medicine list. I think what we need is to put all this into perspective when we're talking now about NCDs as a major contributor to maternal, to death. The roadmap for integration, and I want to make my few last slides on what needs to be done for this. If you take, and the same can go also for diabetes, because these are for the community level services in terms of the redesigning. I think these are the critical, hypertension and diabetes. So I talk about the integration of non-communicable diseases, that we need to integrate NCDs into the work of community health officers. And community health officers are CHOs who have gone to school for 2 years, who are posted to the communities to provide health education, health promotion. But the focus, even at the school, is on maternal and child health. So we need to do something about that, Then, of course, access to medication is very important. The health promotion and prevention services, we need to strengthen health promotion services. In actual fact, for Ghana Health Service, we just, maybe we are good at this. We just created a new division, which is called the Health Promotion Division. First, we have the Public Health Division, and then we took Family Health from it to focus on maternal and child health, women health, and that. And now we thought that the focus will also come on health promotion. And the health promotion, for instance, should not only be on maternal and child health, should not be only on chronic diseases, it should not be on communicable diseases alone. It cuts across. So that needs to be strengthened. Of course, for our primary healthcare system that engages communities, somebody was talking about the redesigning. If you look at Mauritius, Mauritius is one country that has totally redesigned their primary healthcare system and focused on NCDs because of the burden of disease they have. So they are engaging communities. They have community responsibility to actually listen and understand what communicable diseases are and how they can help families to overcome and educate families. The relationship between the health providers and the family is very strong. And I think that is one example that, so the whole system, they have high diabetes, they have hypertension, and so it doesn't matter for them to go and start looking at other things. They want to focus that in their next 5-10-year work plan as the country. So we need to do something like that. And we need to take advantage of the opportunities that we have, particularly as it relates to our primary healthcare system, and the fact that we have community health committees, we have community health volunteers. The difference between us, and I talk about Ethiopia that came and learned from us and went and changed and overtook us, and so many other countries have overtaken us in a way. When they went, our volunteer, I mean, how long can somebody volunteer? Really, today in our communities? The person volunteer for 1 year, 2 years, and so what? I mean, it gets off. Sometimes you go, you don't even find the community register because he's coming to Accra to come and look for a job, because we don't pay them. But in Ethiopia, they take the people from the community, they train them, the same thing they came and learned from us, but the difference was that they put them on salary. So they went and recruited 40,000 volunteers that are on salary, and they are working in the communities as the primary care providers, doing basic things, immunization, education, but focusing more on health education. And their indicators are looking very, very good. We need to also look at data management and capital, which is very important, because without data, without evidence, you cannot make informed decisions. It's very important. So when we talk about 43% of our deaths, we talk about our maternal mortality. In this country, when we talk about maternal mortality, we are talking about institutional maternal mortality. But the number of people, women, who are dying in the communities that we are not capturing, it's not part of our data. And it's very important. How do we even collect data from the private providers so that those who inform us as to the choices that we make or the decisions that we make or the policies that we put in place? We need to focus also on in-service training if we are going to start looking at NCD. In actual fact, people are still in the communicable disease mode in Ghana, even in the Ghana Health Service, even in the ministry. So this is not a priority. And unless you show them the data, you reorient them, you change the structure of training. I am very sure that if you put 20 community health nurses here now who are just in school, and you talk about NCDs, they'll be fumbling because the whole training of community health nurses, PhD, is on communicable diseases and not non-communicable. We need to, in fact, this is one of the things that I talk about Mauritius. The patient empowerment is part of their redesigning. But not only patient empowerment, but family empowerment, citizen responsibility to focus and talk about the things that each family person needs to know. When I was in Israel, I visited a hospital, and one of the questions, and there are certain things that needs to be done from zero when a child is born. 1 year, you have to go to hospital and do certain things. Adolescents have to go and do certain things, certain examination. Adults have to go. Screening is part of it. And I ask, and it's covered under the, the MHO, Mutual Health Organization. And I asked, so if the person didn't come to do, say, screening for hypertension or screening for breast cancer or cervical cancer, they say, you dare not. You go to jail. Because there are certain services that you cannot accessing that country if you don't also show. And everything is electronic. So as soon as your data is pulled out, you say, oh, for 2 years, this person hasn't done screening for breast cancer, for example, every 5 years, or cervical cancer every 5 years. You have not been for 5 years. They will tell you, go and do it 2 days later, bring your results. Otherwise, you don't even access certain services. In Ghana, can we do that? Can we even, if we are not even going to do that because we don't have the system to do that anyway, how do we empower and encourage people? How do we see health screening as part of the system? How do we ensure that, you can confidently go and do medical examination, as part of the system? Then we talk about, in all this, we have to do a lot of supportive supervision and monitoring because we need to ensure that we strengthen the system of supervision and make sure people are doing the right thing. And finally, advocacy and stakeholder engagement is very important. And that is why I talk that it's not only the health problem. For instance, in Mauritius, when they redesigned, they make sure they brought in the Ministry of Gender, the Ministry of Agriculture is part of it because of nutrition that Professor Costa talked about. Ministry of Education is part of it because the syllabus has to be changed right from education, from the community, from the preschool level or school level, that that reorientation of the general population. So in conclusion, let me say that so there is a need for us to mount a strong primary healthcare response to NCDs. And I take that strongly even from the presentation that Professor Costa made this evening, by strengthening our primary healthcare system. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We only need to fix what we are doing to align and make sure that we get the maximum benefit from it. The Ministry of Health and the Ghana Health Service should prioritize investments into NCDs. In fact, when I was trying to look at even the budget for last year, to see how the money is apportioned. And you see for NCDs, everybody thinks that it's not important. So in terms of our budget preparation, we need to start putting and making investment to that. We need a good governance and coordination. And the changing dynamics. Everything is politics. Prof, can I join you to talk about politics? Everything is politics. And so some of the decisions, if you are technical, it's not based on, it's based on politics. And it's unfortunate, And of course, some time ago in Ministry of Health, we had 7 ministers in 5 years. So averagely, it's about 7 months, 8 months per minister. And of course, what that means is that every minister can with his or her priorities. And you need a lot more effort to be able to change that decision. The most important is the alignment between, because when it comes down to the basic, then it means that we need to also make sure that these services are paid for. So we need to align the work between the ministry and NHIA, or the service agencies and NHIA, so that at least, public health services, as stated by the policy and the strategy, is paid for. It could be that if you are in a CHIPS compound and you have a population of 3,000, maybe paying 70 pence or 50 pence per capita as part of, so the nurses, it will even motivate the nurses to go out and do their outreach services. So that is the end of my presentation. I hope I've been able to address some of these issues that have been discussed for the last 3 days. Thank you very much.
Awoonor for excellent presentation. We will now allow a few comments or questions from the audience. Just show by hand and we will. Yes, Prof. Tetramenyu.
Yeah. A very profitable 3 days. Yesterday we were rather gloomy after the triple portion of hypertension, cancer, and mental illness. It was a heavy dose, and there was no fermented food to push it down for us. But today, I'm sitting here and I'm feeling very optimistic. I'm feeling very optimistic because my faith in Ghanaians and in the Ghanaian public service has been re-established. I think it is very easy for us sometimes to feel that, oh, in Ghana, nobody works, nobody does anything. But I think that all the people who have spoken to us over the last 3 days have shown their dedication, their commitment to Ghana. And we don't praise them enough. We don't sing them enough. And I think that it is really very important to do so. Health is life. Health is wealth. Without health, all the things that we are trying to do in Ghana will not work. It will be useless. Imagine you've done everything and then you are told that you have this terminal cancer. Like this morning I heard, a very good friend of mine, his brother, sent me a WhatsApp from the US that he passed yesterday here in Ghana. So it doesn't matter what you have. Of course we will all die, but it's about when and how you die. So I think that we cannot overemphasize health enough. And the lectures, the extent, the magnitude of the problem, as Professor Akusan has suggested, is that this is an epidemic. And when you have an epidemic, you mobilize to deal with it. And it is very good that our young people know, but it is shameful. It doesn't matter that it is a holiday, that we don't have enough people to listen to this. So especially today, we've had two excellent lecturers who know the length and breadth of this country. Professor Akusan, as a former Director General of the Ghana Health Service, and Dr. Awoonor, who actually I've known him for almost 20 years. We were working on mutual health insurance before the national health insurance started in the late 1990s and early 2000s. These are very experienced people, and I think that particularly for Dr. Awoonor, who has worked in some of the most deprived regions and districts in Ghana, it came out adequately in his talk. Fortunately, all is not lost. The president of the academy and myself are members of the National Development Planning Commission. I actually am the vice chair, and I'm also the convener of the Human Development, Productivity and Employment Committee. And I think that this is too important for it not to be repeated. So we've been having this National Development Forum, and we are going to push for this to be repeated so that we can also have, as Dr. Awoonor speaks, we will have somebody from the National Health Insurance and all of those other bodies to respond to some of the points that have been made. Because I think that unless we do this, we're just joking. It is just too serious. The lifestyle changes, the curriculum issues, the spatial dimensions, all of these are important. And we need to make everybody hear. We cannot just continue like this. Like, this thing that was said, that everybody comes and learns from Ghana and they get better. The Malaysians came, they learned about palm oil production from us. Now we import palm oil from Malaysia. So Dr. Akusan, that palm oil that you want us to eat, we're not even producing enough of it. We are having to import it from Malaysia, mostly for industrial purposes, but it is true. So I think that we just cannot go on like this. We owe it to ourselves, we owe it to these young people, and we owe it to generations who are not born yet to do something about this epidemic in our time. And so the Academy and NDPC will be collaborating to do this, and we hope that the media will also join us so that this message is communicated to all Ghanaians. Thank you very much, and I'm sorry I've taken so much time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Deborah from the University of Cape Coast. First, I would like to thank the two speakers for excellent delivery. And also, I would like to address in particular questions to Dr. Awoonor, Director PPME. After what was an otherwise excellent speech, Dr. Awoonor was very silent on one crucial area. Coming 5 years after the whole world, through the WHO, had now come to the realization that surgery is a very important part of the universal health coverage, I was expecting just a little bit on the National Surgical Plan. And we know the Lancet Commission has quantified the disease burden as 30% of all surgical diseases of the national disease burden. So it's a significant proportion which needs to be addressed. I know Tanzania, Zambia, and near home Senegal have all produced national surgical plans. So my question is, when or what are we doing in that respect? What's the ministry thinking on the national surgical plan? In particular, I will address the areas from the CHIP compound to the district hospital level, where the majority of us live. What are we putting in place to strengthen the surgical systems in those particular areas? Thank you very much.
And it's a light one. I think address it to Professor Kosa. Generally, he said that you have 3 types of fats, type 1, type 2, type 3. The type 3, if I understand, is not a good one, is it? And these are the fats from seeds. Then I saw groundnut oil there. I like chewing groundnut. So I was worried. I said, hey, then maybe what I'm doing is not good. But these local oils that are produced, I'm glad I saw that palm kernel oil is good. But that isn't type 1, I think. But that's also seed. So generally seed oils are not good, but palm kernel is good. So if I chew palm kernel, and I used to do that quite a bit when I was a small boy. You chew, swallow some, use some to cover your feet, and you are the best boy in town. Which one? Should I shouldn't eat groundnuts again or what? I'm not sure.
Thank you very much. As far as, yeah, you are right. Thank you for the question. You are correct that the surgery is part of the SDG. I think last 2 years or last year, even myself and Professor Kosa were at Ensign to have a conference. I think you were there as well. And that was quite a good presentation from Tanzania, I think Malawi, Rwanda. In Ghana, I don't think that we are doing anything much on that yet. If there is, then probably the ministry is doing something on that. But for the agency where Ghana Health Service, we are not. I don't know whether Professor Planchurul at the college probably might make a comment on this. But as part of the national policy development, we have not. And I think that is a very important, because the reason why we were at the Ensign was to look at using the SDG to look at the global practices and see where our focus is. And I think that's a very good question that from here I can take that up to look at it.
I think Professor Tejome knows where comments. So I think what's important is the strengthening of the link between the Ghana Academy and NDPC. I think that is very crucial. Prof, groundnut has a lot of protein in it. It has a lot of fiber. the amount of groundnuts you need to produce groundnut oil is a lot. I don't think you chew anywhere near that amount. But you see, these classifications are made on the quantity of polyunsaturated fatty acids within the groundnut oil. And groundnut oil has more than 20% of polyunsaturated fat. And that is why it becomes a type 3 fat. But if you're chewing groundnut not because of the oil, but I'm sure because of the protein, the carbohydrate in it. And of course, the amount of fat in it is pretty small. 2 cedis groundnut oil, very small. If you can chew a whole bag, then yes, we'll get worried. So yes, it's a type 3 oil, and certainly from my understanding, type 1, type 2. But you see, the natural, or should I say the convention is that we should use type 3 oils. But type 3 oils are not natural. And all the evidence from biochemistry is that the body doesn't know how to use it. So long as you take type 3 oils, your cholesterol level will be high because the body will have to pair it with cholesterol before it can use it. Meanwhile, the entire pharmaceutical agencies are there with statins to reduce your cholesterol. So it's almost as if there is a collusion between the food industry and the pharmaceutical industry. Eat vegetable oil, cholesterol goes up, statins will bring it down. You continue to eat vegetable oil, and this. But if you eat type 1, type 2, and I'm saying that so long as that is the fat in your breast milk, who can say it is bad? Nobody. You know? And for me, what is shameful in this country is that we've allowed people to tell us olive oil is good, but palm oil is no good.
All right, let's take
Thank you very much. My question goes to Professor Akosa. I'm basing my inquiry on the premise of what you said, that you challenge tradition at your own peril. The Chinese eat everything that has 4 legs except table. So they can eat shawarma and the pizza and that's for including their noodles, but they can use exercise to stabilize it. Since we do not exercise, who is checking the vegetable oils that are coming in and it will be hurting us? And 2, with respect to the statistics that you said, Unilever says you shouldn't release it. Is it that when you release it, their business will go down or will get more healthy? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm Quest Maoli Felix, and in an earlier presentation, I discovered that most of the products on our market contain the maximum amount of sugar that is supposed to be, legally to be used. So my question is, if the sugar content is very high, why are they still on the market? Is it because our agencies are not effective, or they don't have the maximum support from the upper?
Good evening. Thank you for this very enlightening presentation and discussion. My question is to both Dr. Koku and Professor Akosa. A telling point that Dr. Koku made was that countries learn from us and then they leapfrog. But one of the good byproducts of that is that sometimes when we are catching up, we can also take solutions from other countries. Exactly. So Professor Akosa, you mentioned the collusion between the food industry, the pharmaceutical industry, which is very true. So there are some things that other countries are doing. Chile, for example, has very strongly passed legislation around selling sugary drinks around school compounds. Food labeling has bills have passed in New York. Calorie intakes are now being presented in New York and so on and so forth. Similarly, with regards to physical activity, we were recently in Kigali in January, and there the car driver who was taking me to the airport was telling me about the community programming that they have. Every Sunday, they get together to clean their community, and then every Sunday, they close the major highways to run. So these are things that are already being done and successfully done in countries as diverse, democratic, and political as Ghana. So what can we learn from these countries to improve our policies around, say, food labels, advertising? For example, I'm new to Ghana, so I'm observing everything. So the major advertising I have seen is one for Uber, two, Pepsi. Pepsi is everywhere on Kanda Highway, on La Road. And then the third big one is Alomo Bitters, alcohol. I see them in the streets. You go to the airport, they're sponsoring the trolleys. So what can we learn from these other countries to ensure that we are doing more? And then the other day I was talking to somebody in the restaurant, and he said, the only time people will run on the streets is when MTN will close the highway and pay people to run. So what can we do to learn from these other countries around regulated policy introduction and systemic implementation to improve preventive and promotive practices that can reduce healthcare costs significantly and don't take much out of infrastructure or any other budget?
Thank you. I think that is what we really should be doing. One of the difficulties is that we've got agencies in this country. They have got the mandate to do a lot of things, and yet they do not do. I specifically went to the Ghana Standards Authority to find out if they can assess trans fat in the vegetable oils that are imported, and they can't. So if I say that Gata oil comes into this country, which has been used God knows how many times, bleached and deodorized and brought into this country, it is already almost 900% trans fat. It should not be used again. But if you can't assess for trans fats, then you can just eyeball it and say it is vegetable oil, bring it. But for me, the simplest thing is not to accept vegetable oil, but to ask, what type of vegetable oil? Is it soya bean oil? Is it granite oil? Is it sunflower oil? Is it corn oil? But to write vegetable oil, for me, it's something that I cannot understand. But hey, go to the ports, they're coming in as we speak. They're piled there waiting to be delivered to come in. Food labeling is a problem. To today, Food and Drugs Authority has that mandate. Even with the whole issue of GMOs, there was a concerted effort to say that, fine, if you think GMOs are good, at least let us have the labeling. What is GMO, what is not GMO, and all that. And still, we don't have the responses. The question that was asked from the back was, beverages contain far too much sugar. There is a recommended amount, not less than 22.5 milligrams per 100 milligrams. Most of our beverages contain that, and yet they're on the market. It's almost as if people don't want to do what they are supposed to do. But again, this is the kind of thing that hits businesses, all right? If you go and say Milo has far too much sugar, you've got to deal with the manufacturers, all right? Those who produce Bonvita, Chocolate, you just taste it and you know that it has far too much sugar. What is it called? Huh? This way. It's all sugar. And all of them. But the point is that who is bold in the regulatory mechanisms in this country to be able to say, no, it exceeds the recommended amount of sugar and therefore reduce it. We're not saying take it off the market, but reduce the sugar content. Advertisements. Hey, football. I mean, UEFA Championship was sponsored by Heineken's and Pepsi. Are you going to say no to that? But the point is that if people know that these things have effects on their health, then they're not going to drink as much as. You understand? So the education part is very necessary, but the regulatory regimes should be strengthened enough to be able to act. The community thing, I think that is what Dr. Koku Awoonor has talked about. If communities are empowered and they get into NCDs, communities will know that every Saturday morning, let's clean up, let's do some physical activity. It will improve the community's health and, everybody within the community. So these are all things that we have to do. The president has clearly indicated that from this series of lectures, we need to do a policy brief. So there will be a policy brief coming out of this lectures for the ministry, for Parliament, for NDPC, and hopefully we can then proceed from there. So yes, there are lessons that we must learn from other countries and begin to implement those policies here. Thank you. I hope I've answered the question. There are regulatory agencies who should be doing the work, but unfortunately, I don't think they have, a good enough spine to be able to do the work. In this instance, I'll mention Ghana Standards Authority and Food and Drugs Authority. All right, they oversee foods, medicines, even equipment that are to be brought into this country for the use in the health sector. The Food and Drugs Authority must approve them before you can bring them into this country. But as far as food is concerned, yes, we need more food labeling. We need them to be able to say, if you exceed recommended amount of sugar, then it will not be on the market.
Let me just add, I think that one of the, I think as we discuss NCDs and talk about prevention and talk about, management, but then also the issue about the end. But those of people who have already have NCDs and their treatment and that. But even when you talk about the surgical as part of, one of the things that we do not also do is about palliative care and pain management. It's completely out of the way. So, yes, somebody has cancer, it's end stage. Management of those cases is also an issue because, for instance, at the end of the day at Kolebu, they will tell you, or the Comfornoche, they will tell you, there's nothing, you can take him home or take her home. And so the whole palliative, I think Tetekwashi has about 5 beds. I don't know whether Kolebu, I doubt if Kolebu has a palliative care unit that even manages, people that, So I think that we need to start linking all this. That we talk about prevention, but there are people already who have the disease and therefore needs to be managed. I think that there is a disconnect. I talk about politics, which is very important, but it has to be managed. Because when it comes to the politics, sometimes the technical people do not have their way to actually get things to be done. And that's a major problem. I mean, you know what needs to be done. Thank you. Yeah. So the disconnect will be, and I like, Prof, what you just said, that how do we bridge the gap in terms of policy brief? Because we need you. We need this kind of, policy brief from this session, for instance, will come to the ministry, and that will also form the basis. I've just realized a couple of weeks ago that one of the most powerful groups that can also make changes is the Parliamentary Select Committee on Health. That through them, a lot of the things that we need to do as a country can be pushed because they are the legislators. So I just want to put that as part of the next steps, particularly the policy brief from this 3-day discussion that will inform us in terms of our policy formulation and implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Accra Girls Senior High School. We have had very wonderful discussions for the past 3 days. I was here for the NDPC, and I've been here a couple of times with my students. I have about 2,200 students in Accra Girls. Accra Academy has a greater number, and Presec equally same. These discussions are very good, especially at first hand, like this. I don't know, but I believe we can package such discussions from first-hand presenters like this, where the students appreciate the presentation, they see the data, they see the presentation. I like Professor Akosa's interlude with the comedies, and it makes it lively. In fact, when these students I have brought, they are just 41, go back to campus, they give a summary of what has gone on here. So every time I want to bring students, I have sort of a rush. Everybody wants to come. If we can put these things on the internet and give some teasers, bits, they go to the internet, the school internet, ICT labs, and they open to foreign, funny things that may not necessarily allude to their benefits. But if they know, they can see Prof speak on something like type 1, type 2, type 3 oils that are good, that can be used. They go and debate amongst themselves. They give more examples. In the examination room, when I ask them questions, these are first-hand informations they can give to me than just reading raw from books. So if we can package these presentations in such a way that the students can easily get them on the internet in our labs. Now they are used to mobile phones. They go home. Instead of going on WhatsApp and just doing all sort of junk things, they forward these pieces to their friends and they can discuss them and have a lot of time with it. Thank you. Let me add this one. Let me add one more. How are we having a curriculum reform going on now? The NDPC is also working. And the other time I asked this question at the Christ the King forum. How are we looking at pushing these girls and boys at the lower level to come to appreciate the need for attitudinal change in terms of the environment, the food that they must eat, and all that? I'm waiting for the first girl who will go to the canteen and say that I want coconut oil rather than vegetable oil that is not well labeled. And my students will say, yes, it is true. Professor Akosa said it. And it wages a storm on campus. And before we realize, the next 2-3 days, coconut oils are frying plantains for chips. And they will prefer to go that line. And it moves from one campus to the next campus to the third campus. And then we have a change. Thank you very much.
Our time is fast spent and the chairman will not attempt to summarize. We've heard about fiscal activity. We've heard also about the alignment of the systems, of how we do things, the importance of NCDs, even for the institutions that are tasked to handle these and how they are collaborating. I'm very happy about the proposed collaboration between the Academy, NDPC, and other agencies, and also the policy briefs. But even above all, what the teacher raised about packaging the information in such a form that they could be accessed through online. And the Academy is already doing that. And I am sure that this particular presentation will be available. It is available. It is available. And I trust that as time progresses, you will have a series of files of this which you can use in the schools and also in your homes. I would like to thank you for your attendance. Thank you.